Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I have a special guest on the show today, Sarah Lopez. She is joining me. She is a single mom of two. She is the operations manager at Shock CBD. She is here to talk to us about her experience not only with narcissistic abuse, but with narcissistic abuse recovery, which is the primary focus of my channel. And I am so excited for you guys to get to meet Sarah. She is a powerful person. She has great energy, and she has a really incredible story. So, and you guys, thank you for submitting your questions in advance too. We appreciate that so much. So Sarah, welcome. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for showing up. We are so happy to have you. How do you want to start with your story? Do you want to talk about where would you like to start?
I don't know. It's kind of because it's taken over a lot of my life, and I didn't realize that until I was in recovery, which kind of makes a lot of sense of the decisions I've made in the past. I started off as a really young mom, 19, when I had my first daughter. So I immediately got married, and that relationship, because we were so young, I never really thought of it as like a personality trait disorder or anything. I mean, we were both young, high anxiety, like we were a military family, so the stress was always really high. But there was a lot of toxicity. I didn't realize that was in my marriage. And of course, we were married for about 7 years, and it was just always ups and downs. But I was used to that. That's all I ever knew. So then right from my marriage, I went into the actual relationship that opened my eyes to everything, from cluster B personality disorders and all the different types. And that one was that's the one that actually has put me in recovery the most. Because my marriage was mostly like emotionalist. I guess you could kind of put that in the sociopathic type category, where the one that really set me off the edge was the love bomber. I guess you would identify that as a psychopath, category. So I've kind of had one extremes to another.
Yeah. And during this process, like what actually made you think there might not be something right with the person that I'm dating? What was it, the actual like thing that started you to start researching whether there was something else going on as opposed to just a, unhealthy relationship?
Well, I actually ended up having to research in my marriage towards the end, and I didn't even you would think that would have clicked for the next person, but it didn't. He had actually told me he was diagnosed as a sociopath. Don't know. I've never seen the actual evidence, but I guess regardless, it would be sociopathic to lie about it. So, that was something I started looking up all that. And then because the sociopath is so distant and everything is more of a negative, I think that's what blinded me from the psychopath and the love bombing. So I didn't actually start researching again until way later, where I felt so out of control and things were escalating so quickly, like cops were getting involved. I felt like at times okay, how far are either of us really, because you have to hold yourself accountable for as much as you pull them back in, are willing to go to keep each other in our lives, to keep that chaos and that passion and that it was just straight chaos. So then I opened the books again, was looking at the other spectrum, and I just felt like I was losing control of my life. So I went to therapy, and she recommended me a book called Psychopath Free. And I think reading that is really what completely opened my eyes and changed, because it was verbatim almost what I had been through, and the phrases that I was being told, and the little games, I guess, were cookie cutter. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and if anybody watching hasn't read that book, you should read it, because it's really powerful. What I like about the book is exactly what you just said, Sarah, that it's from the person who's being abused perspective. It's written so that you see that the things that you're being told, the things that are being done to you is actually abuse, right? And so you can really put yourself into that position and see that what you're, oh, you have it there. I love it. Yes.
Yeah,
so you can actually,
I'm going to show, so they need to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great book, and it's a good, I actually also recommend that for people who are trying to explain to somebody else what they're going through, because I think that it can be, especially if the person also knows the person, if there's a third party who knows both of you and they've only seen a certain type of way that the abuser behaves in public, which is, 100% of everybody who experiences this is going to only see a certain part of that person when they're in public. And it can be very confusing to somebody how the person they know and they see and they interact with could be this other person, that you're trying to describe. So that book is actually good for people to recommend. I recommend people who've been in abusive situations to give that to people that they're trying to explain what they've gone through. It's so comprehensive, and it takes each layer of the abuse in a digestible format. So I love that you read that book. And so reading that book, you recognize you're going through that exact same situation.
Mm-hmm. And I think the best part about it was validating that I wasn't crazy. Because you are so involved in everything that's going on, and you're like, I'm crazy, I'm the crazy one. They make you feel like you're the crazy one. Mm-hmm. So actually reading that, and it's almost like your life, because to be honest, we all know, like, when something's not right. We all feel it in our gut. We just can't admit it to ourselves. So that's kind of where the accountability comes in for the survivor themselves. Is you allowed this. You saw this, you were just trying to make it something that it wasn't. And it's hard to accept that. So when you read and you research and you see, even talking to the survivor, you're like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. This is, and it just opens your eyes, and all of a sudden, you aren't trying to lie to yourself about the situation. There's no hiding it.
I think that is it's such a key point that's often overlooked, right? Because a lot of times we stop at the place of, okay, I recognize that what I'm going through is abuse, and then that's it. We don't often take time to say, what's going on with myself that I'm allowing this, that I've accepted this, and what can I do to not only change the situation right now, but to ensure that whatever the fundamental issue is with myself, whatever hole I'm trying to fill with this person, how do I make sure that thing gets filled so that I don't do this again? Because like you said, you thought you had identified some red flags of toxicity in a person, when you were getting divorced from your marriage, and then the next relationship you found yourself in was with somebody even worse. And I see this all of the time. I tell my clients, if you don't fix that underlying issue, you're going to continue to attract the same spirit in a different body, because people can tell, and especially predators can tell who is willing to accept and essentially be groomed for more abuse and who isn't. So I think it's so important that we don't just stop and identify the abuse part, but we understand there's something that we are doing or not doing in our own lives that allow this, that causes us to accept it. Until we understand that, we can't truly recover from the abuse either. So you've been very upfront about that, and I think that's one of the best. When I meet with people, I always see, are they at that point? Are they willing to say, I am powerful in this situation and I can stop this abuse when I have had enough? Not when the abuser says, they've had enough, but when I said enough. And you always had that. You always said, nope, I understand that I made a choice and that I'm making choices and that these things are the reasons why this person is in my life. What was that like for you to say that to yourself? I've made choices that have gotten me to this point, and was that empowering to you, or was it depressing?
I don't know. It's sometimes both, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
There's because there was times like I would make those decisions even during the abusive relationship. Like,
Hmm.
because this is a course over 3 years, so it was constant off and on. Would stand up in my power and move on for a tiny bit, and then get myself pulled back in, and um, so I would have moments and spurts of empowerment, and then I would fall into a depression mode. And I think that it really just comes down to just being consistent and then completely cutting it off. Because I know you had met me actually when I was going back into my relationships. I was getting pulled back in, and I would admit to myself the choices that I was making, and okay, this is why I'm doing this, and I'm giving him the benefit of doubt,
Hmm.
holding these boundaries, seeing this proof.
Mm.
Um, but um, I think that's what made me feel down, right? Is when I said, okay, I feel empowered. I'm making these choices where there was to go in or go out. And then if things didn't work out my way, that's where the depression mode comes in, because you're just like, what's wrong with me? What am I trying to fill? Why isn't this working out? Why did I just fall for that?
Mm.
So, but I'm at the point now where I feel empowered because I'm so
Yeah.
far, like I've stuck with it for so long. This is the longest I've ever gone. I think I'm at like 10 months.
That's
And there's
amazing,
no, I
Sarah.
got over the detox phase. I got over the, because I played games too. I mean, you can't lie. You're playing their game with them. That's all you know. So it's completely no contact, which I always try to lie to myself and be like, well, I can be a little contact. No, you can't.
Yeah.
It's 100% or nothing. So.
That is amazing, and congratulations on that too. It part of the recovery process, I find, doesn't stick if you don't recognize where you've started from and where you are now. If you think, because the recovery process, a lot of people think like we're just steadily going up this hill. That's not what it looks like. It looks like very high highs, like I'm doing amazing, I'm doing great, and then very low lows, like I don't know where I'm going with my life. I don't have direction for my life. I feel like if I don't have this person and make this specific relationship work, then the rest of my life is going to be terrible. It's extreme highs and lows on this process to getting to the place where you are now. I like how you said it was a detox process, because that's exactly what it is. You have to detox the chemicals that you've trained your brain to release into your bloodstream to cause you to want that toxic person. And if you don't go through that process, though, your body works against you. Your body and your mind will be in conflict. You know that you shouldn't contact that person. You know that you shouldn't go back to that person, but your body wants that rush of adrenaline, the rush of oxytocin, all of the neurochemicals that your body got trained to release because of the trauma bond with the person. It wants that. It craves it. And so I think exactly what you're talking about. It's like any other addiction. You can't say, I'm just going to use it once in a while. I'm just going to have it once in a while and it'll be fine. You can't do that, right? When you're trying to break that addiction, you have to go no contact. And so I love that you were able to recognize that. When you were going through this process, did your therapist tell you to do that?
Yeah, I learned that. So she tried to describe it at first, the essentially using him as like heroin, essentially, as an example of me wanting to constantly go back or get my fix. I felt like I was also falling to other things to substitute. But of course, it's always kind of denial for a little while. And then then you do more research, and then I would always like look up your content, and when you see everybody else validate it, and you just really change your mindset, instead of saying it's love, and then instead of saying that, you say this is an addiction, and then you start treating it like that, then you're going to start making progress. But because I never truly believed it, that's why I would never make progress.
Wow.
Until it just came down to like there was no lying to myself about it anymore.
That's so powerful, Sarah. And I say this all the time. The number one reason that you're still with a narcissist is because you're not willing to see it for what it is. You are unwilling to actually believe that that person is doing what they're doing, that they're never going to change, that this is who they are, that there's nothing you could possibly say, do, give, withhold, whatever, to this person that would make them change. This is how it is. And the inability to see that as the reality is what's going to keep you stuck in this nightmare day after day, you know? So I love what you're saying. You had to just call it for what it is. This is an addiction. This isn't love. This isn't something that's like meant to be. And if I just do something a little bit different or do something a little bit more, then it'll all get fixed. It won't. And it'll get worse and worse and worse, because that's the other thing that people think about abuse is like, oh, it's just a little bit. It's like at this level. That's never true. The abuser needs more is what happens, and it always escalates. Mm-hmm. So there's never such a thing as like, it's just once in a while, or it's just at this level, or this is where it'll stay. That will never happen. It will always progress. Yeah, internalizing a false hope. Exactly. Not just internalizing, it's like truly believing it and believing that you can like manifest it, right? Like not just I believe it, it's that I believe it and this person will do what I want them to do, that they will become who I want them to become. And that's another form of manipulation. So I like what you're saying about recognizing it for what it is, calling it what it is, and then treating it that way instead of making all of the excuses or putting in, you know, other avenues that this could potentially play out, because none of those will ever become true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So when you were...
And it's hard too, I think, sometimes when you have like a triangulation situation, because you have so many different faces and opinions put in there that you don't want to admit what it is for that person, what they're showing you. You're listening to other people's opinions because they're using them as weapons against you. So then, but you always believe that one that you love, when actually everybody else around you is telling you the truth. You just can't see it. So
yeah, absolutely. That's so true. When you were going through the detox phase, what did that look like for you? What did that entail? Of course, you went no contact, but what did you do for you?
Well, I had like too many detox phases. So
okay.
the first detox phase, because I feel like this one's really important to the fact that I was dating quickly. And to be honest, I'm going to be open about this. I've lost my virginity at 15. I was married at 19, had this same husband for 7 years, and went right into another relationship. So I'm 30 years old, and I've only been with 3 people, and the 2 out of those 3 were chaos, always. So I'm thinking I need to get out there and meet people. So I start kind of I guess sleeping around with people. I maybe a couple, I think maybe 3 or 4 at the time. And I was just being okay, I'm going to go date. I don't even know what that's like. And I actually remember somebody had asked me to take me out to dinner. And I was like, well, I'm 30 years old and this is how people date. We just went out to dinner and sat down and had a conversation. Those are things I didn't experience because it was always dramatic and, them not being who they say they are. So I go through this phase and I'm like, why am I not feeling better? And then I start drinking a lot more. And then I finally noticed I was getting high with weed, and basically every time I would give me anytime I was under the influence, I wanted to go back to my narcissist, and my guilty conscience would go out, and then I would find myself back there. And this is why that's where I believe the true addiction, right? You're going through this detox phase and you're trying to grab anything you can to make you feel better. And you're taking all these things in, but nothing's doing anything. But as soon as you get back with your narcissist, then that's where I felt that adrenaline rush, where I was calm and fine and everything's happy. And then I kind of started right back over. So once I learned that type of detox, once I experienced that actually kind of made it easier the second time, because I was able to identify what exactly I was feeling. I can tell when it's adrenaline or when it's I'm craving or that withdrawal. I know it sounds so crazy because it's a person, but it literally is the same exact thing. I'm into fitness, and I swear, like, detoxing from sugar is not even like those things. Like, you think how hard it is to be consistent with that. That is exactly how it was with the narcissist, and having to completely remind you what exactly your body's doing, that it's not love. And I would repeat, like, I would role play in my head all the bad things. And try so hard not to get near him, because before it would be like he saw me, he saw that I was getting better and contact me. So then he could like pull me back in because he sees that I'm, excelling. So I had to make sure I also was not trapping myself, because sometimes I would catch myself purposely putting myself in that position so he would come after me, because I always felt like love was when somebody comes after you, chases you, wants you, begs for you, like craves you back. And that's not normal, supposedly. I haven't experienced that yet, but I heard it's not normal.
Yeah, no, so what you said about sugar is so true, because what people don't understand is that nothing on the outside of you is as powerful as you are. My body can tailor make for me the drugs that will make me addicted, that will make me high. And same for you. Your chemical makeup is going to be different than mine, but it's tailor made for you. And that's why the trauma bond is so essential to understanding if you want to truly detox and get healthy, because it's not it is as powerful as some other addictions, but it's way more than that. We can't even explain how much it is, because everything outside of us has chemical compounds that stay the same, right? How your body reacts to caffeine is different than my body, but nonetheless, it's still the chemical compound is the same. But it's not true with anything that's internal. And while that might sound scary to people, I want you to understand that that's the opposite is also true, right? There is nothing on the outside of you that is more powerful than what's inside of you. And it's about learning how to use that to not abuse yourself, to not damage yourself, but to actually empower yourself and to pursue the future that you want. So I think that part is like so important, because otherwise people are like, what's going on here? Like I used to smoke cigarettes, or I used to do this. I've had people say that, like, and it wasn't this hard. Well, that's because this is tailor made for you, your body. And especially if you've been doing it over years and years and years. And actually, every time that you withdraw and then you go back, withdraw and go back, the addiction gets stronger. That trauma bond gets stronger. And so it's such a struggle if you're in the middle of it. You've never heard of trauma bonding. You don't know about how your body, how powerful the chemicals that your body is, how amazing your mind is, that it can tell your brain to produce these specific chemicals. If you don't know that, then it seems very like overwhelming and almost hopeless sometimes, right? Like, this will never get better. I'll never be able to stop thinking about this person or whatever. And what you're talking about is substituting any kind of thing that you use to escape, right? As like, these feelings are just too overwhelming, I want to escape, right? So whether that's sex with other people or drugs or drinking or another change of environment, or there's tons of things that people can use as escape mechanisms, shopping, any kind of thing like that, where you do it to try to avoid or try to numb the feelings that you're having now and try to give you different feelings. But what you're saying is that they're all tied to the same root, and you're actually going to get the same exact thing that you're trying to avoid, right? Where you would be using weed, for example, to try to get away from this feeling. But what it would actually do is lead you right back to the narcissist, because it's all coming from the same root. You're not actually treating or tearing down any of those things that are like calling out to you, like, come over here and pick me, right? They're all coming from the same thing. So I love the way that you're describing that. I'm sure so many people have felt that way too in their process. So that identifying that is so powerful.
That's why the second time I detoxed, I made a commitment to myself that I wasn't going to be dating, not even talking. Like, I didn't need to be trying to latch on to anything or anybody. And my goal was to feel my actual feelings. And if I'm going to recover, I needed to recover, because I am 30 years old. I have 2 kids. I'm a single mom. I gotta I saw for what exactly it was. It scared me enough to put me in just to dedicate myself. So That has been a huge deal for me. There have been I think that happened in December. I committed to that. And since then, I maybe have had sex like twice. And those two times, and they were very spread out, mind you. Um, but every time I would feel empty and I would start feeling like this downward spiral. And I was like, wow, I went so long and I was so happy and I learned how to be alone. And then I would meet myself back into that. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, that was okay. Now acknowledge how you felt after that and pull yourself back. Don't keep trying to go find that next person or that whatever you're substituting with, or if you think you're ready for dating. I think it's all about really being self-aware on how you feel about yourself afterwards, how you're going about dating, and being able to stay committed to that. And like, I don't know where I was going with that, but like, I mean, it's crazy. It's hard to explain because unless you're in it and you feel those ups and downs, you just have to be able to be aware of what exactly that up or down, what's causing that, and then pull away from it.
That's so good. So, yeah, I completely agree with you too on that. Like, some people are, like, their situation that they were in was one where it was easy for them to recover, understand what was happening, recover from it, rebuild, and like the next relationship is the person that they marry. Some people stay out of getting into any kind of relationship for a long time, right? And even to the point of like friendships and things like that, just any type of relationship, any type of closeness. And that isolation actually does more damage, right? So it's kind of, you have to find the balance for what is right for you, for your season and your season of recovering, because if you try to do it all on your own, you probably won't, right? Like, again, this is an addiction, call it for what it is. The chances of you recovering just by yourself is slim, right? But on the other hand, you don't need all of the people in all of the relationship roles to get involved in your recovery either. So I think that that's so important for people to understand, is like, there isn't a like standard, this is how long it takes, which is often a question I'm asked. How long does it take? Well, that depends on your chemical makeup, on your mindset too, which is like the number one thing is your mindset. Because if you think this is impossible, then you're telling your body it's impossible by telling your brain it's impossible, which it responds to everything that you think your body responds to. So it really depends. It's different for everybody. And knowing like yourself, right? Being aware of yourself and how you're feeling as you're trying different things to recover. I believe in like doing body detoxes, right? Because I just said your body is filled up with all of these hormones, all of these chemicals, neurochemicals that are in your bloodstream. I think that you should detox your body. I also think that you should detox your mind. Stop listening to the same voices that enabled you or even put you in that situation. Start paying attention to the voices that you're listening to, because you can binge information. So being aware of like what is actually feeding you.
Exactly. I think that's where I had to learn eventually, was I was getting all this knowledge, and now it's like, okay, now you have to actually apply it, because all these things that I'm like, I'm not going to actually like, it takes action. And that's why I tell people, always get a professional, because I think people, when they see my Instagram, they're like, oh, you think you're just, you know everything, and you're taking these memes. I'm like, well, I'm trying to encourage people to do their own research. Do your own research. Stop listening to everybody around you, and go get help from a professional. So when you have those ups and downs, like, you're learning, one, to save yourself, because at first, in all reality, you're not going to be able to save yourself. I couldn't. I mean, I guess I can't say that for everybody, but when I would feel low and I felt like I wanted to go back so badly, or I was like doing any type of craving, I had my therapist there to talk me through it. And because I've done that so consistently, now I'm able to do it by myself. So like, it's all about just applying it, committing to it, and it gets easier as you go on. But like you said, I wish there was a standard when this is going to be done, because there's times I'm like, wow, I'm doing great, and I find something else that I need to work on right now. I think my biggest thing is learning to trust myself 100% with other people, and not isolating myself, because I like to tend to do that. I like to tend to dig myself into work and keep a busy schedule. So I am very distracted. So that's something I'm trying to learn myself right now.
That's so good. Yeah, there's different. The other thing that I want to say too about like on that same topic is that people try to address all of the things all at once, right? Like I'm going to detox from this person. I'm going to learn boundaries. I'm going to learn to trust myself. I'm going to, learn how to meet people, meet healthy people. They take on all of these things at once, and it's just not practical. And in fact, that's like a true setup to fail. You need to pick one thing, the most pressing thing at that moment, which I always believe is no contact. You need to go no contact. There's some situations where you can't go no contact, but even then you need to start setting firm boundaries when you do have contact and how long you have contact and things like that. And you never do it alone. You get a third party involved. But so there's things like that where you have to start somewhere and build upon that. Stop trying to take on like 15 things all at once and change your life in 15 different ways. None of those are going to stay, because it's not about, to me, it's not about can you get over this narcissist? It's how can I shape my life so that I never have another narcissist come into my life again. There's a difference in being a target of narcissistic abuse versus being a victim of narcissistic abuse. If you've been a victim of narcissistic abuse, you've allowed them into your life, you've accepted their behavior, you've grown an attachment to them. So you can be a target and have it not faze you at all. And that's ultimately the goal, is to not just recover from this experience, but to set yourself up so that this doesn't happen to you again. Because why are you doing the same cycle over and over again? It's unnecessary. So if you don't start with one thing and get good at that one thing first and know that that one thing isn't going to go away, you can't build a lifestyle around it. It's too scattered. You're trying to build all of the things at one time when you just need to build the foundation first.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I wanted, if you're okay with talking about it, I'm a huge believer in float tanks. This is like something that I feel like not enough people are talking about. I started floating when I came home from Afghanistan, and I love it so much, so I've been doing it ever since. And you started using floating as well. How has that impacted your experience?
Definitely making me realize I have more healing to do. The first tank, I don't know, I guess I heard experiences from you and a couple other friends, and I guess I went in with like, I'm so excited, like I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna come out feeling energized, like I have so many things I want to let go. I went in with topics in my head that I wanted to dissect. I'm like YouTubing everything about it. And I get in there and I'm like, I'm not even nervous. Like, I'm 100% committed. If we're going to do this, we're going to do this. So like, cause you have the option to keep the light on, music the whole time. I'm like, no, we're going balls to the wall. I'm closing it. I'm in the dark. Like, music was on maybe the first 5-10 minutes, and then it was just complete silence after. And it just was extremely overwhelming. I couldn't tell you, I don't think actually I've ever been alone in a room with no phone, no distractions, and just being there. So that in itself, you don't realize how kind of, I don't want to say scary, but uncomfortable it is to be in that position if you've never been in that position. And this whole time I'm thinking it's going to be easy. Like, I'm alone all the time because I've gotten to that stage where I know how to be alone. I couldn't before. And so like now I can actually be home and alone and watch TV and not even budge. But so I'm like thinking that's the same thing, and it's not, because when you think about it, you're so stimulated. You grab a phone, like you're watching TV, there's something, cleaning, your body's a distraction. So when I went there, I was like, just all the feelings just rose to the surface, and things I wouldn't even think I was going to think about in there, came up, and just really kind of made me feel more lonely. And I was like, what's wrong with me? Why do I keep, I kind of almost felt like I was taking steps back in the tank for a moment. Why do I keep finding myself feeling sad in these moments? Why did I go to those people? Why did I let them mess up my life? Why did I mess up my own life? Like, and I wouldn't say it's messing up, but in that moment, in your emotions, that's how you feel. So, I got out of the tank, and, I just felt so almost like depleted. Like, I was tired. I was like, I kind of depressed feeling. And I actually started crying, which I've gotten to the point where I stay so busy, I don't cry often. And that's kind of what I was like, as much as the tank experience at first wasn't exactly what I was expecting, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to get me to acknowledge my feelings and get in touch with my body, and also knowing how to separate my mind from my body and just be. And so I like cried it out, and I actually came to my office here because it's like nobody was here, and I just wrote down everything that I was feeling, because I'm like, tomorrow I don't want to say that I'm okay, I was overreacting, it's not a big deal. And I actually had already had my therapist lined up for that Monday, because I did it on the weekend, because just in case I felt like that. And I was, down for like a good week, but I recognized a lot of things that I need to work on. I recognized a lot of, feelings that I hadn't let go. And when I did my last float this last weekend, it was a lot more calming. I was like learning to let go of certain topics. The topics that I had thought about came up, from the last time, but they weren't consuming me. It wasn't like I'm sure a lot of people can relate, like when they're at the narcissist and your chaos starts escalating, or you get this pit in your stomach, you go numb. Like when you're in the abuse for so long, it starts taking over your whole body. It makes you feel sick, everything. And so I was actually feeling those exact same things in the tank, which was really overwhelming, because I had been away from my narcissist for so long and hadn't really had to feel that. And so it was kind of relieving a little bit. But it was things I needed to acknowledge and realize where I'm at in my recovery process, but then also how far I've come, and acknowledge that as well. Because that can be damaging if you aren't acknowledging all the positive steps you're taking.
Mm-hmm.
So the last one was a lot more accepting, a lot more calm. And now I want to keep doing it until, because it gets better. It's just one of those things, again, being consistent and, feeling your feelings.
That's so good. Yeah, you have to feel to heal, little known fact. You can't ever escape something that you're carrying around with you. Just because you don't want to acknowledge it doesn't mean that it's not there, that doesn't have a voice. You trying to silence its voice doesn't mean that it's still not speaking to you throughout the day. And a lot of times what people go into the narcissistic abuse recovery process thinking, I need to recover from the narcissist and the abuse that I sustained during that time, which is 100% true. But nonetheless, there was still something that was an open door to the narcissist into your life that needs to get addressed. So whether that was something from childhood, or whether that was something that happened to you as an adult, or even self-esteem things, everybody is different, as I said, but the narcissistic abuse recovery process is not linear, and nor is it just talk to me about the narcissist, because this isn't just about dealing with the issues and the chaos that's happening right now. It's about actually making sure that you're happy with who you are, that if you are in a float, if you're in a situation where there's no outside stimuli, how do you feel about yourself? Are you comfortable with yourself? Do you love being with yourself even in that moment? And so that kind of stuff needs to get processed. Your body will only do that and your mind will only do that when you're in a safe place, and you have enough time to allow those emotions to rise up. It knows that you've been trying to silence that voice of that thing, that trauma, that bad memory, whatever it was, for so long, that it will only bring it up when there's enough time to process it. So when we feel overwhelmed, that's actually a sign that you're actually in a place where your body and your mind feel relaxed and safe enough to bring up these old issues that you didn't even know were issues. It's uncomfortable, but it is part of the process. And I love that you were willing to sit with those feelings and push through, continue with it, and not give up on that too. You're super dedicated to the process, which is just amazing.
Yeah. I just had to tell myself to stop sugarcoating shit for myself and accept it, and it is what it is. And I feed off that a little bit. I mean, everybody's different, but it's almost kind of just giving yourself that tough love enough, and actually loving yourself enough too, to make that decision to recover and stay with it.
Yeah, that's so good. We had a couple of questions Sarah sent to us. Here's one. I don't have a lot of time to dedicate to myself because I'm a single mom and I work full time and I'm going to court. What is the single most useful step I could take right now to begin to heal?
That's definitely a thing I'm always realizing. I'm kind of trial and erroring, like, because, schedules change, life changes, the
Yeah.
kids need something else. And it's just always adjusting where you can and just being mindful, like, okay, like, I haven't had this time to myself, even if it's just, and I realize this too, it doesn't have to be a long period of time. It could just be like 15 minutes dedicated to like reading a book, meditation, or I think it's also looking at throughout your day and like where you can prioritize that and really stop and think, okay, like, did I really need to be doing this? I could be making time for myself. And also not feeling guilty, because I think that is the hardest thing as the mom, is not feeling guilty about taking time to yourself. And it's not easy when other people around you make you feel guilty for that too, but you have to push through that, because if you are not finding something and time to do something for yourself, it does kind of come back and bite you in the ass later, because you're not well in the mind enough, and it kind of creates chaos within the family even. So I don't really have like an actual like straight up answer. It's really just trial and error and doing and trying to prioritize your time. Like, how much are you sitting around on the phone? Are you getting up earlier? Are you these are things I tell myself every day if I don't get something done. Like, okay, you shouldn't have done this. You can do this tomorrow. You need to wake up earlier. And you don't always have to go out with your friends, and sometimes you have to make certain sacrifices to make sure you're well first, so you can go back into doing those social gatherings too. So I think it's just all about prioritizing and looking at your time management.
That's so good. Yeah. So identify the thing that you want to see changed, or the thing that you want to see happen the most, and then make that a priority and go, go from there depending on how your life circumstances change. That's really good, Sarah.
Mine's fitness. So like, even if it's like, I used to think I have to be in the gym for 2 hours to have me time. And I'm like, no, like, get in there, even if it's for 20 minutes, clear your head. That's all you can fit right now. So sometimes you also just have to accept all that you can fit and take it for what it is, and then just absorb all you can.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, not exactly. That's such a good point. Not being able to do it the way that you think you want to do it shouldn't be the excuse that you give yourself to not do it at all, right? If I can only do something for 5 minutes, that's still 5 minutes. And over the course of, 7 days, that's 35 minutes. If that's writing a page of a book that you want to do, or journaling, or whatever it is, that's 5 minutes. It adds up. Those little things really do. So I think that's such an important point. Just because you can't do it the way you would ideally do it doesn't give you an excuse to not do it at all. That's really good. How did you keep your kids insulated from your drama?
With my marriage, with the ups and downs, it wasn't as chaotic. It was a lot more between me and him, thankfully. But there were times that it did escalate, and I would just kind of let's learn from those lessons, and just would be more mindful about when we were arguing. And that's kind of why we ended up getting a divorce, because we just couldn't hide it anymore. Like, sometimes you just have to, like, you try all these different things. Okay, let's go to therapy. We need to talk about this when they're in bed, and try your best to do all that. But if you guys can't contain your emotions, and sometimes just completely separating until you guys can be, co-parent effectively, or being able to communicate effectively. But it all comes down to just being disciplined and walking away if somebody's going to escalate the situation, to keep the kids from seeing, because you control the situation as well. And that's something that I've had to accept. Like, I'm I want to go and defend myself right away and attack back, but I'm creating the chaos for my kids. If I just would have walked away and would have been like, we can talk about this and keep those boundaries, then they probably wouldn't have been exposed to as much. My biggest narcissist relationship, that one was a lot easier. He wasn't around my kids for years, until finally I let him move in and convinced him. And I kept my kids pretty much out of it, but they still feel it. They still see things that are not right. I think really it's also about communicating with your kids, asking them their feelings, or just observing them too, because sometimes you don't want to get them involved, but taking their feelings in consideration, looking at their patterns. And I noticed my daughter would develop certain things, like, because just like her tantrums, because we were so high anxiety or so high stress that made her high stress. And so it's kind of crazy to see how that different my other son is, because he hasn't experienced a lot of that stress environment. He has to a certain extent, but not as within a middle relationship. And so, I think it's just really being observant with your kids' patterns and being able to communicate with each other and walk away when you need to walk away.
That's really good. And I like what you said about communicating with your kids too, because they don't often have the language to put to what they're experiencing, right? And so it just comes out in their behavior, in their actions. And so that should be an indicator to you as the adult in the situation, as a parent in the situation, what's going on, what they're picking up on, and how you can help them make sense of it and also mitigate that for them in the future. You're 100% responsible for your actions. You are not at all. You're 0% responsible for the other person's actions, right? And so it's not taking on blame for somebody else's behavior. It's just owning the things that you are directly in control of. So that's really good, Sarah. Like that you mentioned that about your daughter too. Seeing like, hey, 2 weeks ago she wasn't doing this. Now she's doing that. What has changed in these 2 weeks? What has been going on in her environment in these 2 weeks? So anyway, that's really good. Another question: how do I explain what a narcissist is to my children without alienating their dad and getting in trouble? I'm assuming that this person who wrote that question is in court, and this is an issue for custody and things like that. So do you have any suggestion? Did you ever tell your children what a narcissist is without saying narcissist?
Nope. I actually would. I don't, especially with their dad. I mean, we get along very well. So there's nothing that's like, I'm very blessed to the point where I don't have to worry about them being in danger in any way. I trust them 100% with them. But at the time, even now when we don't get along, I am not going to tell the kids in any way what their dad is doing wrong or what he should do or doesn't need to be doing. That's between him and I, because in my opinion, you're kind of almost like distorting their view, or you're bringing out things that they might have looked past, and then now you're giving them something to focus on, and now they focus on it too much. So I personally, I kind of recover and just cover up certain things and let them see that person for who they are. I don't need to tell, her that her dad, isn't, doing this or doing that. If she'll see it, she'll notice it, she'll ask me questions. I don't really feel like I want to get into the deep depths of narcissism or sociopaths or anything like that. I really want to focus more on her loving herself and building her confidence. That's what I focus on my kids about, so then they can identify the bad things about somebody around them, understand when something's not right with somebody close to them. But I don't really think it's a great idea in my opinion to really have to go dig that deep until they're way older. It's also an age preference, right? Like my kids are 11 and 3. I'm not gonna go far into that until, obviously maybe in high school, if I can really help her identify what's really going on with the person. But I also don't want them to think they diagnosed everybody, because I think that's what the best part about that Psychopath Free book is that even if you're not diagnosed, or 100% you're with a narcissist or a sociopath or a psychopath, it doesn't matter, because if also you're experiencing is hurting you emotionally, mentally, or physically, then you need to walk away. That should be reason enough. You don't need a doctor, you don't need a therapist or anybody to tell you that person is. If it's a bad environment. So I also don't want to kind of like put those words into my kids until they understand the psychology behind it, because I don't need them walking around calling everybody that upsets them, a sociopath. I want them to be 100% educated and be able to absorb it.
That's a really good point. Absolutely. And, through coaching, what I don't care if the person's a narcissist or not. The only time that's actually valid is if you're in court. That's the only time. And I'm talking about like an actual diagnosis, right? So identifying the red flags are only helpful for you to be able to see, like, and learn from your past experiences. So let's just say someone's a narcissist, someone's a jerk, somebody's toxic, somebody's a good person, somebody's a great person. Okay, we got these 4 categories on this continuum. Just because somebody's a narcissist, okay, your healing should bring you to a place of not even getting near that person. And likewise, somebody could be toxic and not be a narcissist, right? And so why would that person even come into your life at all? And somebody could be a good person, but just not the right person for you. It's okay that you don't connect with everybody. It's okay that you don't have friends, that you're not friends with everybody. Not everybody is meant for you. And so it's not even about being able to, like, point out that person's a narcissist, that person's toxic, that person's a good person, but I'm not going to get involved with that person. This is that's so focusing on your outer world that I'd really question how much time you have spent developing your inner world. Just because you can identify, like, it's not about that. It's like, be focused on yourself, on what you're doing, and the people that you are supposed to connect to, you will connect with those ones. Whether they're a good person or not is even irrelevant. And you can actually tell how healed somebody is based on that. Well, they're a good person. I don't know, why I should just be friends with them, right? And it's like, you when you're talking yourself into being friends with somebody, or hanging out with somebody, or getting into business with somebody, or whatever, if you have to convince yourself of that, it's not a good fit. Even if there's nothing wrong with that person, even if they're completely healthy, some people are just not meant to be for you. And there's different seasons in our lives and things like this. And so I think exactly what you're saying is so important. And a lot of, no one, even people who are qualified to diagnose people with personality disorders, can't do that based off of what you say or somebody else says or whatever. That would be done through their own interaction with the person. And so the label itself actually doesn't matter unless you're in court and you have an actual diagnosis, and you have an expert who can speak to that in court. Other than that, you have to show traits. It's showing the character of somebody. And and exactly what you said, even if this person is causing you mental distress and they're not a narcissist, why are you with them anyway? Because it's still not a healthy environment. It's not the absolute optimum environment for you to grow in. And that's still settling for less than what you deserve, whether that person's a narcissist or not. So I think that's so important. We talk about it a lot on this channel.
Recovery is so important. Because, like, being able to really commit to your recovery and learning your inner self, like, and actually having to trust in the vibrations you get from others. And I used to think that was, like, really kind of like hippie stuff, but no, it's so true. Like, now somebody can walk in and I know, like, okay, like, when I just get a vibe, and, like, I'm being able to read people, and that's because I'm learning to trust myself again. Because at first when I was in the chaos, I just felt like I couldn't trust anybody. And there's even still times I feel like I can't trust anybody, but I'm working on that part. But that's why I got to stay in recovery, because I want to be able to trust. If I can't trust myself, then I'm kind of vulnerable to anybody around me and taking advantage. So you need to be able to trust yourself so you can call out, the good, the bad, and knowing when to walk away and when not to.
So true. And, like, when you trust yourself, you can walk into any situation and not be anxious about how many people are going to be there, what type of people are going to be there. I wonder if there's going to be, somebody there to take advantage of me. You can just go into the situation and be yourself, because you're so confident that this is who I am. These are where my borders are. These are my boundaries. I have no problem enforcing them. I have no problem, holding my space, keeping my space. And so it doesn't really matter what environment. Again, it's when your inner world is solid, it doesn't matter what your outer world looks like. You can walk into any one of those situations and not have it, cause you to be feeling super depleted, to make you feel like anxious or nervous or sad or depressed or whatever. Any of those negative emotions that come from just being unsure of who you should connect with and not trusting yourself, not trusting other people, that's extremely draining to walk around all day like that. And so when you do the work and your inner world is so solid, it doesn't really matter what your outer world looks like, what the environment is.
Yeah, very true.
Well, that's so good. All right. Do we have any questions in the comments section? Let me just quick scroll through. Okay. J. Marie, okay, my husband and I just got a divorce after 30 years. I was wondering your advice if I should help him since he seems a little homeless right now and helpless. Should I help him? I would say you got divorced probably for a reason there. And part of the issue that a lot of people have when they're in a toxic relationship of any kind, but especially with when they're in an abusive situation, is that they take on the responsibility, right? They exhibit codependent traits that take on the responsibility of somebody else. And you have to understand that they also get a choice. They get to make their own choices, their own decisions, and those decisions come with consequences, and those consequences are up to them. You know, this is no different than the child who knows that mom and dad are going to bail them out every single time. Well, that child never learns to make different choices because it doesn't matter what choice they make. They get the result that they want because mom and dad always step in. So it's, everybody gets to, and same with you in this situation, J. Marie, you get to make your own decision, but it's really important that you analyze the place from where you're making the decision. You know, are you making it out of habit? Well, I always do this. I've always done that. This person can't help it. Can they not help it? Or are they actually just choosing to not make a different choice? And it always has to do with the life you want.
I think it definitely depends on that circumstance.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, for sure.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I love this question because it just really relates to my personal life when it comes to when I was separating from my husband. But yeah, like you said, it does compare on the circumstance. Like, are you doing this all the time? That wasn't the case for me. It was just us acknowledging that we weren't meant together or be together, and then setting each other up. Because regardless if you agree or disagree, regardless if there's a personality trait disorder or not, doesn't matter. You're getting a divorce, and then he's still going to be in your life if you have children. So then you kind of have to decide, okay, like, set each other up for success. So for me personally, like, I didn't want to make it a more chaos than my kids will already experience. It's like, let's just agree that we're not going to be able to be together, and then let's do this as calmly and as possible. And so we didn't actually get officially divorced for like 2 years. I think it might have been 2.5. And I didn't want to take him to court and have Texas, like, just pull all the child custody. He was at a friend's house staying, and I'm trying to get on his feet because it's expensive. To get a divorce. So it's like, okay, well, you want him to be this person that you want him to be such a great dad and take care of your kids. But I'm also like, look at the position that he's starting off in. And so I wanted to make sure he had gotten, he had a job at the time, but like get up and then like find a place to live suitable for the kids, because if I'm just going to make his life more difficult, and that's not helping my own kids. So, he, I think it was about 2.5 years. But then, once he got set up and everything, then we finalized the divorce. But it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies. There was times we were butting heads and everything, but it's just really kind of putting to decide, okay, like, let me help him, and then he'll help me because I got to keep health insurance. Let's get all the kids set up. You want that transition to be as smooth as possible. And then once everybody kind of, the calm after the storm kind of deal, everybody's in their routine. And then that's kind of where you pull back, right? And you don't need to help him because now it's up to him. It's like, okay, it's like, take care of your family first, whether it's a split family or not. And then, what he decides to do with his own life once everybody's squared away and set up, it is up to him. But I've also had to learn that just because, also our marriage didn't work doesn't mean that he doesn't move on in his own life. So I think that's another thing that I've noticed is hard, is being able to accept that they're going to continue to do what they do. They might get remarried, that you're going to see them do things they didn't do with you. And you just have to accept that it was not going to work out with you. There's nothing wrong with you or anything. It's just, it wasn't meant to be, and that they can go off and do their thing. But your focus is your kids, keeping everything calm and in a routine, and making sure that you get better yourself so you can be better for your kids. So it's a give and take at certain times under certain different circumstances. I mean, that was just mine personally, but I mean, you have to make that call, because obviously if you're the one always helping and they're not taking the help and they're just kind of hanging themselves, and that's a whole different story. But I really believe that even putting your differences aside and almost treating it like it's a business at first, until you guys can like learn to co-parent and coexist in the same room. And, you know, now we're probably more friends than we were when we were married and have communicated better than when we were married. So, you know, sometimes it ends up working out more. But it's just putting your ego aside and doing what's best for the kids.
That's great, Sarah. I think that is all of the questions. Do you have anything else you want to talk about before we end?
I don't think so. I guess really just my focus is that not letting whatever you had been through define who you are and your experiences, and
That's
just
so good.
accepting for what happened, and it happened. Because there's some days still to this day I look back and I'm like, how did that happen? That was like chaos. Like, how did I even allow that? And you kind of reflect, but then it's like, no, that's not where I'm at now. And you can always recreate yourself, and recovery is the most crucial part. Just like how you recover, like picking yourself up, and just you're gonna have those downfalls, and being able to pull yourself back up and not letting that be like your only story, because now I want to recreate a whole different one and it's going to be a success story, and that's up to me. Those are the things that I'm deciding to do, and not letting somebody else ruin or rule my life, or feel like they can come in and out of my life like an open door. So it's really just having the discipline and the commitment to move forward.
That's so good. You know, I often tell my clients too, the person that you were when you were enduring the abuse needed to develop certain traits in order to survive that, right? And survival mode, while important, isn't how you're supposed to live the rest of your life. You're supposed to be able to evolve into and have the space to do that safely, right? The person that you need to be in order to walk out your dream, your purpose in life. You need to have the space to evolve into that. And so you should honor the person that you were, who helped you survive that situation that you were in when you were in an abusive situation, that you didn't feel like there was a way out. All of those things, that person was doing the best that they could. That being said, that person cannot take you into the future. That person cannot walk out your purpose. They can't be living your dream life. That person of you need to be okay with letting that person die. That version of yourself doesn't need to be in super hyper defense mode anymore. Now you need to recreate who you are and become the person who's able to sustain the life that you want to build. And that can only be done when you honor who you were and acknowledge who you were in the past, but also admit that there's things that person didn't do that need to be done now. And allowing yourself that space to evolve into that person it's so necessary, because if you don't, the old version of you cannot learn the things that you need right now, and they certainly can't walk out your path in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just being comfortable with your truth, because it's kind of crazy. Like, a lot of people don't understand or haven't taken the time to educate themselves on all of this. I mean, think about it. I mean, I went through for so long without realizing what exactly I was dealing with. So you can't expect other people to understand or exactly where you're coming from, or feel like you need to have their validation that they believe you. There's going to be people that don't believe you. There's going to be people that call you crazy or try to think you're overreacting, and you can't. You have to know your truth and stand your ground, and know, like, you witnessed what you witnessed. And regardless of what everybody is trying to change your narrative with, that's their problem. You need to focus on acknowledging what happened to you and moving forward, and not, like, you know, letting that engulf you, because I think you already feel almost like you're crazy when you find out all these things. I know I went through a phase where I'm like, am I the narcissist? Like, am I the one that's doing this to somebody? But then, you know, that book says, like, if you're questioning that, you're usually not the person. You have just wired your brain to take over some of their traits for survival mode. And having to have the commitment to undo that is crucial. And I just think it's sometimes it gets hard doing that when other people still don't understand what you went through, or think you're overreacting, or I get that all the time with things that I post, or other people that were involved that just don't want to accept it for what it is. But it happened, it is, and that's all that matters, is I'm moving forward and recreating
That's so
that
good.
life that I deserve. Because
Yes.
you have to understand that you got to know what you deserve and your worth for you to feel good.
That is so good. Absolutely. No, that's really good, Sarah. Well, it has been so great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me, and we should do this again sometime. You guys, all of Sarah's, you can go follow her on Instagram. Her website is below. Keep in touch with her. Go follow her. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. If you guys have questions, you can go ahead, put them in the comments, and I'll send them to Sarah, and she'll answer them on her Instagram. So, all right, you guys, thanks so much for tuning in.
If anybody reaches out, I'll be happy to answer.
Oh, great. So, yes, so if you have questions, you can actually just go over to her Instagram too and ask her there. But you can, if there's any comments in here, we'll keep an eye out and send them on over to you. Thank you so much for coming on, Sarah, and for everybody for tuning in. We'll see you later.
Thanks for having me.